Okay, so when we were thinking about today, we called it evoking Padmasambhava. So I suppose at this point I'm just going to talk for a little while, and in a way I want to, well, let's see if we manage it. There's a particular aspect or quality of Padmasambhava I want to draw out, but in a way before doing that we need to set the ground a bit, evoke him more in his fullness before we dwell on one particular aspect. So you could say that, well, the first question in a way is, who is Padmasambhava? Of course, some of us here have been aware of Padmasambhava for decades, some of us quite new to Dharma practice and quite new to this. So we'll start off trying to start out more generally and then get a bit more specific. So who was Padmasambhava? At his simplest, at his broadest, he was a historical figure from about 1200 years ago. He is famous for decisively bringing Buddhism to Tibet. That is actually quite a lot more complicated than that, but at least that's how the story goes, is that he brought Buddhism to Tibet. And in that context, and more broadly than that, he often comes to be seen as a second Buddha. So what does it mean to be a second Buddha? Quite, in a way, maybe one of the things I'll seek to evoke a little bit is why he might be seen that way. But I suppose what we see here is that we've got a historical figure becoming a mythical figure, becoming an archetypal figure, taking an archetypal quality. So in a way, not without bringing Padmasambhava down too low, it's a bit like Robin Hood. You know, there must have been some guy who kind of ran around with a bow and arrow, and he's become this person of legend, this person of myth. So I say that's, in a way, that's not quite doing Padmasambhava justice, because there's a lot more to him than Robin Hood, but that's that kind of that movement. There's a similar movement from history to myth. So that, just in a nutshell, is who he is, who he was, a historical figure who's become a mythical figure, an archetypal figure, a transcendental figure, called the second Buddha by many. So then, of course, the question comes, well, why are we talking about him? Out of all of the figures in Buddhist history, why evoke him? And to put it, and I suppose that people have different answers to this, but I suppose one of the qualities he's most frequently associated with is the story of his conquering and transforming the demons, the complex, the messy, the dirty, the angry, the aggressive, the unwanted energies to Tibet. Again, so the story goes, at the time that Padmasambhava came to Tibet, Tibet was a very wild, dangerous, unintegrated, complex country. And he brought culture, reason, awareness to that. And of course, maybe for all of us, for many of us, there's a parallel in our own selves. As we engage with practicing the Dharma, we're presented with the bits of us which don't play nice, and kind of a recognition that for our own, just for our own health as human beings, but particularly if we want to grow on the path, we need to do something with the messy, the complicated, the unwanted. And he's held up as this symbol of this, like he conquers the demons, he confronts the demons, he goes into battle, he faces them, he transforms them. So that, in a nutshell, is what he's most famous for. But in a way, one of the things that we wanted to do today was to broaden him, because my feeling is that to relate to Padmasambhava solely in that mode is to do him a disservice, to do us a disservice. So what we're going to hope to bring out through my speaking now, and the ritual we do after this, is to broaden him. Not to dismiss the importance of that meeting, transforming energies. That's certainly a central part of him. But he's bigger than that. He's broader than that. We are bigger than that. We are broader than that. So you could say that one of what I suppose for myself and I perceive in others, one of the greatest dangers we face in our spiritual lives is a narrowing of ourselves, what we need to do, how we need to practice. that in all kinds of ways, it's like I believe that's a problematic. It limits us. It limits the Dharma. Of course, it's understandable because the thing about narrowness is it's easy, isn't it? It's like we know where we are, we know what we're doing. Yet when we do that, we miss something out. We miss out more of us. I'm not going to really seek to speak to the social political situation of the world that we find ourselves in, but I imagine for all of us, when one talks about narrowing, there's an immediate association with the threads that we find ourselves faced in at this time. So as I say, I'm not going to address that in the course of this talk, but of course it does come to mind. So yes, one of the great dangers we face in life and the Dharma life is it's got to be like this. This is how it has to be. I was talking to a friend the other day and he was telling me about his first encounter with Buddhism, not Sri Rama, but in a way it's emblematic of the sort of issue I'm presenting. So he went to meditate, he sat down, meditated, and after the session, the leader came up to him and said, "We don't sit like that." He's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, you need to..." We didn't go into massive detail, so I assume it was some kind of, like it was a Zen group of some kind, and they have a very strong tradition of sitting in a particular way, half lotus position. And my friend said, "I can't do that. My legs will just fall off and I won't have a pleasurable experience. I won't be able to engage, I won't be able to work with my mind." The leader just said, "Well, that's not how we sit like this." Kind of, this is my way or the highway, effectively. This is some decades ago. I'm not suggesting that they would necessarily do the same now. And of course, my friend walked away because he couldn't sit like that. So it's, I just think it's a really common response in ourselves, in response to ourselves, in response to each other. It's got to be like that. And Padmasambhava, in his fullness, can just blow that wide open. So I'm just going to read you a little bit from one of the stories of Padmasambhava. There's a lot of Buddhist terminology and jargon in this. That isn't the point, so don't worry about all of the things that you don't understand. What I'm seeking to evoke here is multiplicity. I am Padmasambhava the Lama. Mine are the counsellings that illuminate and measure the causal data of the doctrine. In the book of the world and of nirvana, I explain the implicit and absolute meaning. I am Padmasambhava of lofty meditation. Mine are the counsellings and contemplating the doctrine outside the time of meditation. In the circle of samsara and nirvana, there is no accepting or rejecting without production or completion. I am Padmasambhava the doctor. Mine is the nectar of the doctrine, the counsellings that cure one of death. And apart from their apparition, I raise up images identical with God's. I am Padmasambhava the sorcerer. Mine are the counsellings of the Dharma that transmutes the 5 poisons. I do not bid farewell to pleasures. I take them with me on the path. I exalt in the fivefold gnosis. I am Padmasambhava the queen. Mine are the counsellings of the Buddha at the hour of death. I protect the undertakings of those who have great faith. I make happy the subsequent life of man. I am Padmasambhava the old man. Mine are the counsellings of the doctrine that shows the way for old men. I escort and guide in 3 moral practices. I travel along the ways of celestial happiness. I am Padmasambhava the youth. Mine are the counsellings of both the relative and absolute meaning of the doctrine. I storm the fortress of the 5-fold ecstasy in places of every kind I like to play. I am Padmasambhava the little one. Mine are the counsellings of the ecstasy of the doctrine that rouses from sleep. While in the 3 realms the transitory being dies, I evoke the glorious yoga, receptacle of the knowledge of life. I am Padmasambhava who knows no sickness. The counsellings of the great perfection of the Dharma are mine. So of course, hearing all that, one might easily feel even yet more overwhelmed by all of the things that we should do, that we should be. In a way, that's one of the dangers of the Dharma, isn't it? Every time you turn around, there's another thing you should be doing, another thing you should be realising. So just to acknowledge that, in a way, yeah, we'll come back to that in a bit, but yeah, just to acknowledge that. That's one of the things that we can hear when we listen to that sort of thing. So that's just like a whole bunch of different images, of different ways of practicing, different things being evoked. Let's kind of focus down a bit. So today I'm going to talk a bit about the 4 archetypes. So this is drawn from Jungian psychology, and was really, in a way, it's just another way of exploring ourselves, our Dharma practice. It was really popular in the movement decades ago, really, but I think there's still a lot to be got from it. So just to evoke them, some of you won't be familiar with the model. So, but yeah, just before we do that, so the archetypes, really what they're evoking is kind of energies, qualities of being, which, well, the suggestion is are sort of transpersonal. So they're not. It's not my story. It's not your story. It's not this culture story. It's not that culture story. They're aspects of experience which are present in every culture and every person's experience to varying degrees. Yeah. One of the things Sangha says, which I found quite striking about this, he says it's important to understand that when we use this language of archetypes, what we're talking about is taking something and manifesting it in a more kind of moving from a mundane to a more spiritual understanding of that, just to say. So yeah, so the 4 archetypes. So we've got for warrior, warrior, facing, overcoming, doing, energy, challenge, obstacles. Of course, this is, again, as I was saying at the start, this is one of the aspects of Padmasambhava which most often comes forward. So Padmasambhava, facing the demons, taking the Vajra and battling, sitting in the cremation grounds, facing the demons with crazy heads and weird things and spitting fire and all of that. So that quality. But there's other aspects as well. So we've got Padmasambhava, the magician. So the magician, in a way, I think it's also interesting which archetypes we find easier to contact for ourselves and contact more broadly within our culture. So the magician is more like, is the intuitive, kind of sees something new, sees something different, pulls on little threads and something new emerges, something unfolds. So one of the ways I find the magician manifesting in my own life is when I'm in conversation with somebody and they say something, and it might seem completely innocuous, and I just ask them another question. We're talking about something, and they say blah, 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 and there's just something in that, and I just say, oh, what do you mean by that? Or can you tell me a bit more about that? And of course, this doesn't always happen, but sometimes this happens. It feels like you're just kind of pulling on this little thread, and it opens up this door, and it takes you into a completely new and sometimes unexpected world of depth, of significance. As I say, I don't think I'm doing anything particularly special in doing that. I think the main quality it required is a balance of curiosity and a little bit of courage. So I had this with a friend the other day. We were talking and they asked me a question and I gave an answer. And in that answer, I had that sense of the thread of myself. It's like there's more to say here. The conversation moved on, and then I went back and asked them, I said, oh, there was an opening there, why didn't you take it? And they said, well, I wasn't sure if I was welcomed, I wasn't sure if I was wanted. And what I knew for myself in that moment was actually, I'd have really liked somebody to ask me that question, which kind of opened a door in my heart and my being. So maybe there's a little tip there when you're talking to people, just be a little, it's that combination of curiosity and courage. Just say, oh look, there's that bit I didn't, it's often a bit which we don't quite get, we don't quite understand what I said. And so I just ask them, oh, what did you mean by that? can take you into another world. Padmasambhava, the lover. So, of course, lover, the archetype of a lover is often associated with romantic love, but really what it's evoking here is closeness, care. So there's, in the story of Padmasambhava, when he's leaving Tibet, there's this, he's only been there for a short time, there's this kind of like, just this real upsurge of, well, of longing, of kind of a loss of the desire to be close to that which brings life and beauty and awareness to us. Yeah, some of the really beautiful parts of the teachings of Padmasambhava is kind of like his interaction, particularly with Yeshe Sogyal, one of his kind of core disciples, devotees, and their communication is she's saying to him, "You're leaving now. I don't want you to go." Kind of that desire for closeness, for union, not needing to be taken as a romantic in a way, as a metaphor for connection. And then finally, Padmasambhava, the king. Again, another metaphor which I think our culture, probably even more so than the magician, is like our world is devoid of kings and queens. And particularly, so what the king does, what the queen does, is they bless, they witness, and they say, what you do is good. Such a gift. Padmavajra, one of the most senior and respected teachers in our tradition, I think, for myself, that's one of the things I most value in my experience of my being with him, my encounters with him, is that sense of, just kind of blessing and recognising my efforts. I can find it incredibly moving. He hasn't been here, hasn't visited here for a while now, but I remember a few years ago, might have been the first time he came to visit while I was kind of part of running the centre here, and I just felt really blessed by him. Him saying, you're doing a good job, you're doing the best you can. I can see, like, it's not perfect and you stuff some things up, of course you do, but you're trying, and I witness that. Very, very, I feel just moved talking about it. Very, very important. And as I say, one of the tragedies of the world we live in is the absence of kings and queens to bless us. So that's something of the four archetypes. And in a way, so you can already see that if you have all four of them in mind, like what Padmasambhava, the warrior, kind of overcoming the demons, it already expands him and broadens him, and they interrelate. So in a way, it's this interrelation which I want to evoke the importance of, really. Because as I was saying at the start, I feel one of the dangers I observe in myself and I observe in my friends is this a propensity to over-literalism and a narrowing of our understanding of what we need to be doing and how we need to be practicing. And I suppose, and just to name it, particularly around this, the effort for the kind of the doing, I'm doing this, I believe our capacity to think that we should be doing more, or we should be doing it in a particular way is so strong, but the need to nuance that, to balance that is so high. So I was thinking a bit about the warrior. We were talking about this in our study group on Wednesday, and I think I used this metaphor then, but it's been really on my mind ever since. It's like, if we think about the warrior, we're doing the Bodhicharya. Those of you who are familiar with that text, there's a lot of warrior energy, particularly the chapter on it's like, I'm going to slay and destroy what restricts me in myself, particularly. There's a lot of violent imagery. And there's nothing wrong with that imagery, it's taken in context, fully understood. And I suppose what was really striking me is this archetype that we find particularly in Westerns and in samurai movies, neither of which I've seen very many of, but there's still something about them which really speaks to me. So often in these movies, what you see is you see a young man normally, and they're ready to fight. They want to fight. They want to overcome. And the image which was coming to me is their first choice is to draw the sword. That's what they do first. It's like, you've got a problem, get the sword out, hit it, get the gun out, shoot them. And guess what? Doesn't go so well, actually. They make a mess, they hurt themselves, they hurt other people. Of course, if you're a warrior, you think your job is to hurt. Not so sure if it is. And you just kind of cut yourself up and you cut other people up. And I was thinking about this kind of this parallel image, which is the old warrior, the mature warrior, the warrior who's really seen, he's done that, he's lived that, and he's seen a lot of blood. And the thing about the old warrior is that drawing the sword is the last option. It's not the first option, it's the last thing they want to do. It's not that they're not good with it, actually. Like, it depends on your context, but I'm thinking of the movie Tombstone, Clint Eastwood in like the early 90s. It's a classic one of this metaphor. You've got Clint Eastwood, who's this old man, and nobody really respects him. And they're all about the hero. They're all about the whole movies of this journey to find somebody who's really good at shooting people. They never find anyone. And then in the final scene of the film, Clint Eastwood gets in a fight and he shoots like whatever it is, 6, 8, 9, 10 people. So he's capable of that, but he spent the whole film resisting it because he's seen the price of blood. So that's quite a strong image, isn't it? But so again, kind of taking it into like this context of the Dharma practice, it's like in a way that's slightly melodramatic. But I suppose I've seen myself and I've seen other people pushing too hard, too naively, causing ourselves and other people harm. And in a way, in the name of Padmasambhava, or using Padmasambhava's name to explain that behaviour. So, for myself, the most striking example of this is as a young man coming into the practice of Dharma, and particularly around stopping drinking alcohol. And I just I just did that in this incredibly kind of blunt, willful way, where, and in a way, I suppose I want to balance the critique I've just been presenting of that, because in a way, actually, it was kind of fine. Like, I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't go around like on a Friday night down the pub, kind of telling my friends off for getting pissed. I was just kind of quietly on my own, drinking orange juice instead of vodka and Red Bull or whatever it was. But I suppose, so it wasn't that bad, but there was still, I suppose there was just a real kind of, there was a naivety, there was an unintegratedness to that, there was a push. And it was kind of all right for a while, but it definitely I suppose the key point really is, spiritually speaking, that isn't what's resulted in me stopping drinking. It kind of like, it was a useful kind of shift from habitual every Friday night drinking quite a lot to, so I shifted out of that kind of like strong habit pattern, but it definitely didn't result in me stopping drinking. It was years later that I, with a much more kind of subtle, nuanced, gentle approach, shifted my relationship with alcohol. So just in a way, it's like, and we're all at different points in our Dharma lives, we're all in different points with other people, and connections with them. So it's like, so in a way, it's like, there's something about taking it too literally, forcing it, and goes wrong. So why does that go wrong? What is it that is going wrong in that? So what I'd like to suggest, no surprise here really, is that the degree to which our ego is invested and identified with the behaviour, that's the core of the problem. Jumping back to the 4 archetype model, in that model they talk about the shadows. All of the archetypes have shadow forms, and each of them is when the archetype has become identified and limited by ourselves. So it's kind of like, we've appropriated, we're trying to do it, we're trying to make it ours. kind of goes wrong. It gets squished, it gets malformed, doesn't go so well for us, doesn't go so well for other people. So it's again and again, that's, you know, no surprise in Dharma practice. It's about letting go of this kind of I'm doing this and letting something broader, simpler emerge. As we were meditating, I was thinking it's interesting, cutting down, shifting the archetype model again. We'll hear this a bit in the mantras we listen to in the kind of ritual section. So you've got Padmasambhava as the warrior doing stuff. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Then the second face of Padmasambhava people that we often see is Padmasambhava the lover, like this evocation of longing. And of course, it's interesting, isn't it? Because both of them are very open to a sort of like an I appropriation. I'm doing this. I'm going to get enlightened. I'm going to open up to the Guru. I'm longing for Padmasambhava. There can be quite a lot of I in all of those. And I'd argue that one of the less celebrated or drawn out aspects of Padmasambhava is Padmasambhava the meditator, Padmasambhava the open field of awareness. Very, very strong aspect of his teaching. Interestingly, like if you look at his actual Dharma teachings, it's this opening, this relaxation. That's his primary Dharma teaching. So it's interesting that we get so kind of caught up on either the warrior or the lover, but two different forms of doing, pushing away what we don't want, drawing towards us what we do want. But yet the fullness of his teaching, the fullness of him is this sense of relaxing, of opening, letting be. So how do we do that? So another example from my own life, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years ago, I can't quite remember now, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So in a sense, so this is speaking quite personally, so one of the weird things about running a Buddhist centre is that you're doing two things at the same time. The first thing you're doing is saying, hey, individual human beings, come here if you want to, express your individuality, flower and unfold, just in your very own way. But the other thing we're saying is, wouldn't it be nice if you wanted to stay here and you wanted to be part of our gang and you wanted to be with us? And of course, yeah, for myself and Mitra Sara as Mitra conveners, we're at the cusp of that complexity, because I often joke with people, like our performance indicators, like our targets are people committing to practicing within True Ratana. But yeah, it's crucial that people feel completely free to do that in their own way, in their own time, or not at all if they choose to. So that's quite a confusing thing to hold, actually. We don't normally talk about this, but at this particular time, I was just, a whole bunch of like bright, keen people had chosen to go somewhere else, either to move away or not to practice within True Ratana anymore. And it's really important that that's their choice. It's got to be. But yet also, when you invest time and energy and interest in people, and then they leave, it's a bit like getting dumped, but it happens again and again. And the worst thing is they don't even really think they're doing it. They just say, thanks very much, I've had a nice time, bye-bye. You're like, God, I've just spent weeks, months, years kind of getting to know you. And now you've had enough, you're just out of here, and you don't even tell me you're going. So at the time I was feeling that was hard. I was finding it really hard, and I was particularly finding it hard because then there's another bunch of new keen people coming in who I've got to kind of welcome and befriend. And I'm like, God, I'm just a bit heartbroken, and I've got to do it all again, and maybe they're going to go too. God, it sucks. Anyway, so dear old Padmasambhava to the rescue again. So I was talking to him about this. I was really feeling it, and he said, in a way, it's obvious, isn't it? But he said, Dharmashalin, I wonder if you need to, so this idea of kind of like connecting, welcoming people via the spirit of metta, the spirit of Maitri, and he's saying, well, I wonder if you need to not get so focused on individuals, but think about kind of serving Maitri as a force in the universe, as it were. That sounds a bit more hippie-ish, but it's like, rather than getting over-focused on, me and you and your friendship with me and my friendship with you, it's like, actually, you're just serving the quality of depth of communication, of really meeting people in the universe. And it helped, actually. I'm pleased to report that. Well, thank you, Padmasambhava. That was a good piece of advice. Because, of course, what it did is it took the me out of it. It's like, I'm being a friend to these people and they're leaving me. You can always tell, can't you, when somebody's talking, the emotional weight they place on the pronouns tells you a lot about what's going on for them. I'm investing in you. Okay, well, there's a problem there. It's like, actually, that's not going to serve me and it's not going to serve you. How can I take that a bit more lightly? Yeah, so it's this idea of unhooking the ego from the experience. And this is, in a way, just to dwell on that, I think it's just a really useful thing, just in whatever aspect of Dharma life you find yourself. So it's just like noticing how the eyes tied in, and just seeing, can you just soften that, and what impact does that have on everything else? Again, like in terms of that kind of warrior energy, really meeting, facing challenges. In a way, I'd argue that's what the old warrior's done. Like the young warrior, it's like, I'm going to beat this, I'm going to fight them. Whereas, what the old warrior's seen through is he's seen through the I in that. It's like, I will fight if I need to, if that's what's required. But I don't choose to, I don't want to. And actually that softens and opens and tends to result in things going better. Yeah. So I think one of the useful things about having this kind of broadened sense of Padmasambhava, these four archetypes in relation to Padmasambhava, in relation to ourselves, is it allows for this kind of broadening, this blending of qualities, which I just think it's more accurate, it's more true to reality, and it's more helpful for us. We avoid typecasting ourselves, we avoid typecasting other people. One of the reasons I like Padmasambhava as a figure is because, well, in a sense, because he was a human being, he holds this multiplicity, this complexity, in a way which some of the classic archetypal figures, they do, but they do so less easily. So Amitabha is red and he's about love. Amoga Siddhi is green and he's about overcoming obstacles. They're a bit monodimensional. As I say, actually, that all the qualities are present in all of them. It's less obvious. So I suppose I just encourage all of us to, kind of just explore and more fully fill out our sense of those different qualities, those energies. For warrior, for magician, for lover, for king, for queen. Because I think we'll be doing ourselves and each other a favour if we allow more of them to be present. In Bante's book on Milarepa, he's got this lovely little bit where he's talking about warrior energy as well. As I say, it's a particular preoccupation of mine, so I'm my ears prick up when people talk about it, and particularly talk about balancing it. So he's got this whole section talking about, again, it's a young guy coming into contact with Milarepa, another Tibetan historical archetypal figure, and this kind of a young guy really bringing this kind of warrior energy, I'm going to do this. And Milarepa doesn't dismiss that, but he's kind of tempering it. And what Sangharakshita does there, which I remembered it differently to how he does it, which is often the way. He says, he's talking about what the warrior needs to do, so you need to strive to become a flower. He's talking about the warrior and the flower, and he says you need to strive, you need to face difficulties so that you can relax and open and expand. And be at peace, like the flower just responding to the sun. And he says the flower needs to strive and work to fulfill its openness. So he's really careful to, again and again, he's saying it's not that one is right and one is wrong, it's about balancing. Although interestingly, he does say that ultimately for warrior, for doing energy has to be in service of the being energy. So for warrior, energy manifests in the ideal of the flower, of openness, of receptivity, of being. And I suppose, again, as I said earlier, you see that in Padmasambhava's teachings. The core of his teachings are about relaxation and openness and spontaneity. So just to wrap up, I suppose just to come back to this, I suppose for me, this core thing, because I see the most recurring, in a sense, I think the most recurring danger I see in myself and other people is this tendency to think that it's like this kind of all or nothing kind of young warrior. Let's go, it's got to look like this, and we've got to do it all in a day. I haven't really said that so far, but I think that's a really strong feature of this young warrior, naive, unintegrated, unwhole energies. It's got to be everything. It's got to be everything right now. Like I can't begin to count the number of conversations in my life I've had with somebody which has gone along where the first line was, if I was really doing this, I would ... It's like, it's countless. It's as countless as the sands in the sea. It's like this again, this story of, if I was really doing it, I'd be doing it more. I should be doing this, I should be doing that. If I was really serious about this, I'd jack in my job, I'd leave my partner, I'd go off to a monastery, I'd go off to the cave, I'd go off wherever. Such a strong story. And of course, the challenge is that these figures, Padmasambhava, Milarepa, they easily, if taken superficially, they support that story, because Padmasambhava was this crazy guy who ran around facing demons in the snows in Tibet and never had a home. So it's like Milarepa even more so. So it's easy to read that young hero, the naive, unnuanced warrior into their lives. And for me, I suppose, I've got a very deep sense that the true kind of act of warriorhood, in a way, the true act of all of these archetypes, is saying, what does it look like in my life? What can I actually do today, tomorrow? The most radical step we can take is the one which we actually do. So again, some of you have heard this story before because it's one of my favourites, but I remember as a very young man meeting, at university, meeting this guy, and we were just chatting away. He was, I don't know, the boyfriend of some woman I knew or something like that. I hadn't met him before, and we were chatting away, and he'd just been off demonstrating it, like, I don't know, like a trident base or something like that. Anyway, he'd just been doing some kind of right-on thing. And I remember saying to him, it's like, oh, I should be doing that. So again, you've got this instant thing of, it's like, I should be doing that. If I was really serious and cared about the world, then I'd be off at a trident base or wherever it was, I can't remember. But what really struck me is the strength. He just said, no, it's not like that. Just do something. Just do something, you know, like, I'm not sure if he actually said this to me, or this is me, like, this is 24 years ago, whatever it was. So it's like, he definitely said that. And I think he said, just recycle one can. I'm not sure if I'm making that up or if he actually said that, but anyway, I think it fits the story. He said, just recycle one can, because if you do that, that's done something. And that is more worthwhile than all of the hot air about how you should be doing more, which is totally worthless and a total waste of time. And of course, spinning back to what I was just saying about making it all about us, there's a lot of I. There's a lot of I in I should be doing more. I should be doing more. If only I took this more seriously than ... There's a lot of I in that. And it just gets in the way. It limits what we do. So yeah, so it's, I'm just really, really confident that Padmasambhava's, in a way, his message to us is a real invitation to, well, to act, but act as much as we can, act in the way that's, or take, yeah, I suppose coming back, because it's like this sense of the next step is the most radical, the next step is the most radical, actually do what you're going to do. Do something. And in a way, that takes us back to the magician, because you really don't know where you'll end up. You take that step and the whole world looks different. And I suppose, again, I've just seen that again and again in my life. I've had so many times people have said to me, I'll do X, but no more. There's no way that I can, you know, like I'll do this, but I won't do any more. That's it, that's the limit. I can never go further than that. And a little while later, they're doing it. It's like, they're just doing, like life has unfolded, life has grown, life has emerged. And there's a whole bunch of other things going on which they were convinced they would never ever do. And it's just like, so that's the thing. It's like, you know, you're back to that famous quote by Kant. It's like, if you act, there's a magic in it, there's a possibility in it. You do not know where it will go. So don't worry about these grand gestures of blah, blah, blah. Just do something and it will emerge. And Padmasambhava, I think, he gives us a much fuller sense of the range of possible actions. It's not all about Ra. You've got the lover really valuing people. You've got the magician being really curious, being open. You've got the king really blessing. The king rests, the king holds the mantle, and we can relax into the mantle. So thank you. That's enough.